Hey everyone, I'm John Sisson, and today we're taking a look at Sony's latest full-frame camera, the Sony A7C. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Sony camera lens reviews and tutorials, and hit that notification bell to be notified. Now, the A7C is Sony's most compact and lightest interchangeable full-frame camera, and essentially looks like a A6600, but obviously with a full-frame sensor. Now, the cool thing about this is that you get that nice flip-out LCD screen, which is what I love from the ZV-1 and the A7S III. But you also do get this new 28 to 60mm kit lens. Now, this is a compact lens that is made for the A7C, so it makes it more compact, especially when traveling around. But also, because it is an E-mount, it can be used on any other of the E-mount cameras like the A7 III, or even a crop sensor camera like an A6600. Now, it does sport a 24.3 megapixel sensor, so this is essentially the same one as the Sony A7 III, and this camera actually borrows a few features from the A7R4. But more on that soon. Let's take a closer look at the design of the camera, and let's talk about the performance and image quality, and of course, what I personally think of it towards the end of the video. Alright, so as you can see, I do have the A7C. It is the two-tone color, so silver on the top, black on the bottom, and it does have the 28 to 60mm kit lens. Just be sure when you're actually using this kit lens, you have to extend it out just over here, just so you can activate it with the camera, or else it won't work. So this is actually what the lens looks like when it's collapsed in. And actually, it is a pretty decent lens. It's not a electronic one like your 16 to 50mm kit lenses that you get on like your A6000 series. Going on from that, you do have your NFC One Touch pairing, which is great if you have an Android device. And on the other side, you do have a few slots here. So on the bottom, you have a headphone jack, mini HDMI, and your USB-C, which is great. I really appreciate that for fast charging. Over here, you do have a card slot, which is on the side, which is great. SDXC as well, and SDHC. And on the top, you do have a microphone input. Taking a look at the top, you do have multi-interface hot shoe, which is great if you want to attach different external microphones, especially if you are using one from the Sonys. And over here, you do have your mode dial, exposure compensation, big record button, which is good, and your shutter button, which is shared with the on and off switch. On the back, you do have a very simple button layout, very reminiscent or very similar to other Sony's buttons on their other cameras if you are familiar with it, and they are customizable as well. You do have a nice 3-inch LCD screen, so if you don't want to use it, you can always tuck it in, and you can prevent any scratches while traveling around with it. Or if you prefer to have it like that, that's entirely up to you. And of course, you can use it for selfies, or if you are going to film yourself, anything like that. And of course, you do have a electronic viewfinder. Now, the electronic viewfinder is a bit smaller than others, but to be honest, it is actually not too bad. You can still look through it. You still see a decent amount of information, and it's not blurry and nothing like the rubbish viewfinders that you used to get back in the day. And of course, on the bottom here, you do have your Z-type battery, which is right there. And of course, you do have a tripod mount as well. Taking this lens off, you can actually see a full frame sensor right in there, which is really cool. Which also has 5-axis stabilization, if you did not know already. Now, that's a good look at its design and what you can expect from it. I did wish there was like a little red record button around here, just like the ZV-1. This is just an infrared light as well, so more of a countdown timer. Comparing it in terms of its size to the Sony A7 III, it's clearly shorter and sort of looks like a camera where Sony had just chopped off the part where the viewfinder sat and squished it to the corner because of how small the viewfinder actually looks. But don't let the size fool you. In my opinion, it's pretty decent and a great tool to have when it's too sunny to view the LCD screen. So if you have the opportunity, check it out for yourself. Speaking of the LCD screen, I love the versatility of it, and it's a step in the right direction from the tilting LCD screens that Sony have on some of their other models. But when it comes to functionality, I wish that Sony had the touchscreen that is just as good as the A7S III. Nowadays, this is just the way to go, and you can see it on other manufacturers' cameras. It should at least be on a camera like this given the price that you're paying for it. With that being said, the menu system was something I was excited to see trickle down from the a7S III to a camera like this, but alas, you're stuck with the older menu system. Now don't get me wrong, I have gotten used to it and a lot of the settings are still in the same place. It's just that the new menu on the S3 was a lot more streamlined, and to me it would have made sense to use that menu going forward. Focusing speed was quick and snappy thanks to its 693 phase detection autofocus points. And this can be great for sports and wildlife, but especially if you plan to use this camera for portraits as you have IAF. It's reliable and accurate for both humans and when I was shooting animals. You do get real-time tracking in movies, which is a feature borrowed from the A7R4, as well as wireless tethering. 5-axis stabilization is a great feature to have on this camera, and while it's not completely effective when walking around and filming yourself, it does do a decent job when taking photos. Just to give you an idea, I have shot both of these scenes with and without stabilization, and the results speak for themselves. But to add a little bonus for stabilization, you can also use Sony's Imaging Edge app with Movie Edit add-on to make your footage even more stabilized. I am using the Imaging Edge app, which is available from the Google Play Store or the App Store from Apple, and this is going to give you probably the smoothest transition without actually getting a gimbal, or smoothest stabilization. That's what you call it. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can get with the benefits of that type of app. Now I'm not going to touch on all the camera's features, but it does have so many that you would just have to spend a lot of time going through it. Every now and then I use S&Q mode, which stands for slow and quick. You basically control the pace of a video as it's recorded from 1 frame per second to 120 frames per second in Full HD. Now in terms of image quality, it is very usable even at higher ISOs, where I was able to go up to ISO 12800, which is by my standards pretty acceptable for online publication. And when paired with the 28 to 60mm kit lens, while not great in low light, was a good companion lens with the A7C, where it gave me some pretty sharp photos and produced some pleasing colors. The 24 megapixel sensor does a great job, and Sony claims to have 15 stops of dynamic range that helps bring out the colors. Now all these photos were shot in RAW with the 28 to 60mm kit lens. Alright, so the Sony a7C is a camera that I sort of have mixed feelings about. On one hand, I do love the form factor. I love that it's smaller and easier to take around. And that 28 to 60mm lens is actually pretty good for what it is. I just wish it had more of a close focusing capability. And of course, having that flip out screen is going to be beneficial for different angled shots, especially if I'm out filming by myself. It makes it really handy. Instead of using my phone, I can just use one device and flip it out and see what I'm filming. Now, of course, it is very similar in terms of performance to the a7 III, but like I said earlier, it does borrow some features from the a7R4, like having the ability to change what eye to focus on, especially if you're using IAF and relying on that a lot. And of course, you know what, having the option to have two types of different color schemes, the silver and the black, and of course, if you don't like the two-tone sort of color, there is a black version that you can get. I mean, I personally don't mind this. In terms of focusing, it is extremely fast and something that you would expect these days from a Sony camera, especially if you played around with the a7 III or a7R4. In terms of image quality, you can't go wrong with something like this. 24 megapixels is actually quite a substantial amount of megapixels to work with, especially if you're a creator who likes to just post on Instagram or just Facebook or anything for that matter, but just want a full frame camera that has interchangeable lenses. Now in terms of video, it is great. I wish Sony did upgrade a few of the video specs on this camera. It didn't have to be a7S III like having 4K at 120, maybe even 4K 60 would have been great to have in a camera like this, instead of having a recycled bitrate or even just the same video specs that you would have had on an a7 III. So it would have been good to have something a bit better, but doesn't have to be like the S3. And of course, talking about the S3, I would have liked if that new menu actually trickled down to the a7C. That would have been great. It does have a touchscreen, but it's just not as good as the competition. And for the price that you're paying, it just doesn't seem like it made sense. All in all, I do like this camera and the form factor. I can understand the differentiation between Sony's cameras, but you know, there's a few things that I just wish it would have had. Other than that, That's about it for me. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you already own one or planning to get one, let me know what you think. And remember to like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe to my channel for more Sony camera reviews and tutorials. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook for more sample photos and photo updates. And don't forget to take a look in the description down below for more information about this camera, as well as affiliate links that do help to support the channel. Now until then, happy shooting and thanks for watching.